Hello everyone, my name is Kat Nichols and I'm a senior writer here at Happiful, and this month we've teamed up with Red January and we're going to be bringing you weekly webinars every single Wednesday at midday to support your wellness just as we head into 2021. And many of you will be from the Red community already, but for those of you who don't know, Red January is an initiative and a community that really encourages people to move and exercise to not only improve their physical fitness, but improve their mental health as well, and to just support all-round wellness, which I think we can all agree is something we need a bit more of in 2021. So the audio for these webinars, in case you miss it or in case you want to re-listen again, is going to be shared on Happiful's podcast, which is I Am, I Have, and on our YouTube channel. So do make sure you subscribe to both of those if you want to get them. And today is our first webinar. We're kicking it all off with a discussion about getting going. And we are pleased to be joined by Neil Bailey, who is a life coach and running enthusiast, and who's also known as the Fearless Knight, which I absolutely love, Neil. I think that's a brilliant name.
Thank you.
And I'm delighted to say that he's going to be our guide for the next 50 minutes. And we are going to leave space for questions at the end. So if you do have a question that you want to wait for a proper Q&A session, please wait until then. But if not, if you have thoughts as we go along, if you have questions to chip in, please feel free to do so in our chat. And my colleague Lucy is going to be there to flag up questions, make sure that we see them and respond to any other questions you might have along the way. And just a note as well that because this audio is going to be going onto a podcast, if you would prefer your question to be anonymized, then please just let us know and we'll make sure that we don't include that question in the podcast. So firstly, Neil, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on.
If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you, the work that you do, and your relationship with movement and mental health.
Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Neil Bailey, and it's more the Fearless Knight rather than the Fearless Knight. Slight difference, because for me it's not about being fearless. It's about feeling fear and taking that next step anyway, which is kind of what we're talking about today. And the knight bit is, I've always been interested in chivalry, and there was a quote I found on the internet from a site called Chivalry Today, which was modern day chivalry is about making the right decisions at the right time for the right reasons. And as a coach, I thought, well, that for me is what coaching is about. It's helping people do that. So I've been coaching for about 16 years now, something like that. Started off in counselling and kind of gravitated towards coaching, and I've done life coaching, business coaching, executive coaching, so personal coaching, and kind of in the corporate arena as well. In terms of the movement, it's an interesting one. I've always run. Even as a little kid, I tended to run everywhere rather than walk. I would either be running everywhere or climbing trees. It was usually one of the two. And running has always been my, I suppose, in terms of the mental health side of it, my stress reliever, really. That's not to say that it's easy getting out the door. It isn't. I've had ME now for about 16 years. And certainly as part of that, I've suffered from, bouts of depression going throughout. So it's not easy getting out there. And obviously we're going to be talking bits about that. I think energy breeds energy. It's getting, even if all you can do is get to your front gate and back, that's massive. It's not about being able to go out there and run more than the other person. It's walk, it's run, it's cycle, whatever form of movement you want. So that's kind of what I'm all about, is using exercise so it kind of frees my mind. It's surprising by the end of a run what you can sort out without necessarily trying to think about it. It's just because it's all kind of going around. And again, this will come out during our discussions. I've always tried to have races or challenges booked in throughout the year to give me something to aim for. So when I'm at a low point and really don't want to get out the door and get my trainers on, there's something out there that I know actually if I don't do this, I'm going to really struggle with that. So it's a little bit of motivation to get out as well.
I love that. And I think what you say about moving your body and that helps you to process your thoughts, I can so relate to that. I'm not a runner myself, but I practice yoga and I've started doing more home workouts since we've been in lockdown. And yeah, just moving your body just gives you a chance to process really the day and let all of that come through. So yeah, I'm excited to get chatting about this. So we're going to start by a chat about your right decision. So we really want to talk about the focus on decisions you've made to become part of the Red community, and for everyone who's joining, who's in the Red community, and kicking the year off by starting more regularly. So we have got a poll that's just been launched by my colleague, And this is for everyone who is part of the Red community. So we want to know why you decided to join up for Red January. So please do feel free to answer that poll and we'll have a look at the results at the end. So to start with, Neil, can you share with us some of your thoughts around decision making, and especially as we move from one year to the next?
Yeah, decision making is an interesting one because to an extent, decision making is easy. In other words, just make the decision. The difficult bit is acting on that. You know, deciding to do something is quite easy, but the action is something very different. And I'm trying not to kind of jump ahead into the other sections, although I'm sure parts of what I'm talking about will. The decision part is being really clear on what you want. Now, I'm not talking about the why yet, kind of the reasons we'll come at later because that's quite key. But actually, what is it that you actually want? And a key thing for me with my coaching head on is making sure that the language that you're using for yourself is positive, not negative language. So you're not, otherwise, every time you're trying to think about doing something, you're kind of beating yourself around the head to make yourself do it. So, you know, kind of the carrot and stick. So, you know, if part of your mental health challenge, I don't know, just trying to pick an easy one, is actually you just want to lose some weight, well, stop concentrating on losing weight, because losing weight is losing something. Concentrate on what you want instead. Do you want to be a certain size, you know, or do you just want to, by losing weight, is that you want to be fitter and just feel healthier? Well, that's what you're heading towards. So really thinking about what you want. And I've been trying to think of a phrase to use without going too corporate language. And it's kind of, what's your success criteria? I'm going to use the phrase and then kind of move on from that. So once you're clear on what you want, it's really thinking about how will you know when you've got it? Because it's a really interesting thing is sometimes we can have lots of things in our head that actually we really want something. And sometimes if you really think about it, you've already got it. So really think about how will you know when you've got it, and think, I'm trying not to bring too much of my NLP in here, but think multisensory. So what I mean by that is in terms of what do you want and how will you know when you've got it, how will you feel when you've got it? You know, what will you be, what are those scripts, those voices in your head be saying when you've got it? And yes, we all have them. We all have those voices. But also, what will you hear other people saying to you and about you when you've got it? Because that's quite an interesting kind of validation for those that need a little bit of external validation. Some do, some don't. And a big thing for me about making a decision along, you know, exercise and mental health is also, for me, is also tell somebody about it. So there's the Red community. Obviously, you can tell about it, you know, friends and family. There is a slight, however, though, is maybe be careful how many people you tell about it, because otherwise you might put yourself under so much pressure that to do that exercise becomes a chore rather than a joy. So it's, you know, when it's a positive community like Red January, well, everybody's there for that reason. Absolutely fine. But, you know, you might have that friend who might be really pleased for you, but then starts coming, oh, wait, are you really sure you should be doing that? Is it really good for you? Actually, you don't need that. You want somebody who's going to be your cheerleader and get out there and do it. And obviously sign up for a challenge like Red January. You know, there are lots of challenges out there, lots of virtual events. You know, so many races have been cancelled over this past year. And a lot of them have now gone virtual. So find one of those, you know, have that little goal ahead and make sure it's those little goals. You know, I'll put my hand up. I haven't always exercised well. And what I mean by that is sometimes I've gone for goals that are too big, too quickly. And then injuries occur, etc. So yeah, don't do what I do, or don't do what I did. You know, set those baby steps. You know, get out there. Back to my, you know, when I was at my worst in terms of my ME, I was always told by a consultant to do what was called paced exercise. So try and exercise every day, but no matter how, if you're having a really bad day, still do 20 minutes, but just make it an easy 20 minutes, but still move. Whether that was a bit of yoga or something, you know, something gentle. Whereas if you're feeling a bit better, then still do 20 minutes, but it means you might be able to do more in that 20 minutes. So it's really break it down into bits. Again, it's one of those big things for me for something like this is people spend a lot of time doing, you know, New Year's resolutions. You know, I'm going to get fitter. But they do it in a way when it becomes so big, it's that word again, it becomes a chore. And actually, you've really got to enjoy it. That's what it's about. If you're not going to enjoy it, you're less likely to continue doing it, really.
Absolutely. And
you know,
I think what you're saying there was something Stuart actually said in the chat, was saying that he's in the same place with having a target to train for really motivates him, but he's missed that in the last year or so without having these things.
Absolutely.
Said he's also a bit odd in that as much as he enjoys being very active, and whilst as much as I enjoy the Red January thing, I find that if I miss a day, it really demotivates me. Maybe, as just mentioned, I beat myself up too much, and it kind of relates to what you were just saying about.
That's a really good thing, yeah. And I just saw the start of somebody's comment saying, you know, I'm not a runner, and you know, obviously I'm talking a little bit about running because that's where I come from, but you know, it's not about running, cycling, as I said, yoga, Pilates, you know, it really doesn't matter. And yeah, it's a really good thing. There's a couple of times of these I've tried having a virtual running coach, so you know, a real person, but somebody to do stuff, and in both times I've kind of, and I'll use the language, I kind of failed at it because the plans I was getting were so strict. Back to his point, as soon as I missed a day, I beat myself up about it. So what I've learned is if I do have a bit of a plan in place, I don't set daily targets. I set a weekly target. So if my weekly target is to do 10 miles, great, I can do 10 miles however I want within that week, rather than, okay, I'm going to do 2.5 miles on Monday, then something comes up on Monday, which means I can't do it, then immediately you're on the back foot. So if you are a planner, please plan. It's what works for you, but don't plan too tightly, because that's when we start beating ourselves up about it.
Absolutely. And I think we'll get into that a little bit later when we're talking about timings as well and when you're motivated. So we should get on that. But moving on from that, so many of us expected 2021 to be a little bit different. And I think we're kind of starting it in the same place we were in March, where we're now in another national lockdown. So I guess my question is, how do we hold on to the decisions that we've made for our own mental and physical health and limit the impact of what's happening around us?
Really tough one. If I knew the exact answer to that, I could probably make my millions. There's a big part of that comes to your motivation, your reason for doing it, which we'll certainly come to later. So I don't want to kind of go too far into that. But also, I think, again, it's about being realistic about it and not setting, you know, it's setting, yeah, by all means, set big goals to achieve, whatever they might look like for you. But it's being realistic and practical about that, you know, within the boundaries that you've done. And certainly if you're part of a community like Red January, or, you know, a Facebook community or whatever it would be, is really pay attention to what other people are doing, because they're probably thinking of doing similar things to you, but they're doing it in a really, I hate the phrase, but they've kind of thought outside the box. That they're kind of doing it, but they've thought of a way around it to fit in with lockdown and all that other stuff. You know, I remember in the first lockdown, I mean, I have a tiny weeny little backyard and a little bit down the side of our house, a little bit you can kind of see through there. And I think when I was running, it was 8 paces one way. And, you know, a couple of times I did about 2.5 miles up and down. So but it was about, you know, 100 and odd little laps down the side of the house. And yeah, it's a little bit mind numbing, but it still gets that blood flowing. You know, it's doing that. And, you know, let's face it, we're on Zoom now. Zoom is out there. All this other stuff is out there. Exercise with somebody else. Find a friend or somebody in communities who's doing it. Zoom each other and exercise while you're on Zoom. You know, who says you can't do a bit of yoga at the same time? You know, you can't be physically in a class, but you know, if you're somebody who likes that interaction, that chat as you do it, go for it. Run on the spot, skip. You know, just do something, because it's so easy to feel alone in all this lockdown stuff. Even if you're in a house with other people, you can still feel alone because we're all going through that mind stuff. So yeah, just, you know, spread it out a bit, and back to that, not planning too rigidly, is also be kind to yourself about it as well. Again, you've got to enjoy it, and if you're really not feeling it on that day, don't do it. Go and do something instead. Go and have a bath.
Yeah.
You know, go and have a nice cuppa somewhere. You just do something else, but that still makes you feel joyful about it and freer about it. You can always do it again tomorrow. It's fine. Yeah. Tomorrow will always come round.
Exactly. And there are some fantastic comments in the chats about different things people have been doing, from yoga with Adrian for her 30-day challenge. We've mentioned there's the Fit app, which is something I've been using as well. You have a 14-day free trial. So there's lots of ways to do it. And I really love as well. So Lisa has said, RED to me stands for realistic exercise daily. So if that is running every day or a few stretches, it's your choice. Absolutely. And I love that. That's something I've had as part of my goals throughout this whole of lockdown, has been to move every day. It might literally mean standing up and stretching from my desk. It might mean going out for a quick walk at lunch or doing some yoga or a workout.
Exactly.
So there's such a variety. I love that. Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the chat. It's really great to see what you're doing. So let's
Oh yeah, saw Joe Wick's been mentioned there. I've certainly seen that him used a lot.
Good old Joe Wicks. He's done fantastic work. So let's have a quick look at the results from the poll to see why people decided to join up for January. So the winner there is, let's see, 36%. I wanted to start 2021 in a positive frame of mind.
Lovely.
Love that.
Yeah.
And lots of people as well wanted to be motivated to move regularly. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much, everyone, for that. That is really, really interesting to see. Okay, so we're going to be moving on now to the right decision for you. So, no, sorry, we're going to be moving on from the right decision
timing
to the right timing for you. That's what we want to talk about. So again, we are going to be having another poll that's going to be going up. My colleague's going to pop that up now, which is talking about when is the best time for you. So this is all about motivation and when you're going to be most motivated to move. So yeah, please do fill in that poll there and we'll have a look at the end. So we're going to start by asking you, Neil, about timing and maybe sharing with us how and when timing has influenced decisions in your life.
Oof. So this is an interesting one. I've been having a little kind of pre-think. And for me, timing, there's three forms of timing for this. So there's when to start. So literally when to start. If you're not a regular exercise and this is you wanting to make use of this to get you started, when is the right time to start? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Is it actually I need to get 2 weeks out of the way before I can get my head together because there's other stuff happening? That's fine. When to finish, and what I mean by that is if you've got a very specific challenge in mind, then again, weight challenge, mental health challenge, whatever it is, kind of back to the first part about how we know when you get there. You know, really paying attention. That doesn't mean you then stop. Hopefully you'll just carry on because it'll now be a habit, but it's, you know, it's thinking about that. And then, but the big one for me, and this is where this poll comes in, is what's the best time of day for you? Because this is a really, really interesting one. I've always kind of been really jealous of early morning exercises. I wish I could. I've tried it a few times, and yes, I can do it, but oh, it's not for me at all. I was looking at the poll, and of course, I saw the thing that I can't vote. Why can't I vote? For me, it's definitely mid-morning is my best time. I think I would say around 10 o'clock. So obviously difficult when I'm working, but certainly at weekends that's more likely when I'd be out and about, or evening as well. So you know, straight after work. But if I do it straight after work, I have to get my kit ready, get home, get in my kit, and get out the door quick. Otherwise, other stuff takes over. You know, if I pause too long, I get stuck in the house. So I've got to be quick and get myself out the door before that stuff gets in there, and I'm back out in the fresh air. But it's trying to find when it's what's on the term as key time. You know, when are you at your most alive, your most creative? That's going to be the best time to really get that exercise done. You know, get that stretching done, or go out for that walk. And if you've got dogs, even better, because you're going to be out the door walking. So, but that's not to say we can. You know, if you work during the day and you're a mid-morning person, that's going to be quite difficult. So it's also working what your next best thing is, really. For me personally, for timing, as I said, mid-morning is my best in terms of the practicalities. Timing around making decisions for me, that's an interesting one. I think for me, it's about having races and events booked in throughout the year to give me something to aim for. I've never been one for New Year's resolutions. That doesn't mean I've made them and not kept them. It's just been, for me, a quite arbitrary date. I would prefer to just have something booked in, and that's what I aim for. And then when I get that, I'll have another one. So the timing for me is often related to, and I'm going to be honest here, how late I can leave it before I run out of time, so I can't train enough for the event I've got booked in.
That's an interesting approach. I like that.
So when is the event, and then work backwards to think, okay, how long can I leave it before I really have to start doing some proper training for this, as opposed to just getting out there and just enjoying a run. So that's probably the key stuff for timing, for me personally, anyway.
Oh, interesting. Thank you so much, Neil. I'm just looking through the chat. We had a couple of questions come through. So one of them was from Claire, which is saying, although I want to exercise and move, I find it difficult to motivate myself to do it. Any advice on how to psych myself up for it?
Whoa, psych yourself up for it. Interesting. Partly that would be the third part, we're going to be talking about the reasons for the decision, the reasons for getting out there. Psyching up's an interesting one. It's a phrase I think I've already used, in fact, but you know, energy breeds energy. If you're not feeling particularly energized, if you jump up and down a bit or stand up and just jiggle about, whatever works, it's interesting how quickly that can make you feel just that little bit more energized to do something. So yeah, so for Claire, my advice initially would be to really think about what does get you jazzed up. Are there certain bits of music that you know you just have to tap your foot to or move your head to, or even a program that just makes you laugh? You know, something just to get you moving and almost make you laugh at yourself, because I think if you're laughing at yourself, your barriers drop and you're more likely to then just, actually, I'll just go out and do something. I'll just go out and get to the front gate and back, or to the end of the road and back. And if you can keep listening to that music while you're doing it, why would you not?
Yeah,
you know,
I have to agree. Music is definitely one for me that gets me going. And
yeah,
something else that I do is I try and focus on the feeling I'll have afterwards.
Brilliant.
Try and remind myself, like, I know afterwards it's gonna feel really good. And just like when I really don't want to, when it's cold outside and I don't want to go for a walk, I don't want fresh air, I just know, remember how it felt last time you went and did that and how good you felt.
Yeah.
So.
And a big one for, I like that as well, because yeah, sometimes it's reminding myself that I will feel better afterwards. And you know, it might sound strange to some, but I like the feeling of having tired legs. It makes me feel like I've done something and earned it. And also a big motivator for me is purely just being outside, listening to the birds and really paying attention to what's around me. I'm sure many people out there will have heard of mindfulness and, you know, meditation, all that kind of stuff. I've never been able to do mindfulness as in just sit and, you know, be mindful and that kind of stuff. But I would say my mindfulness is when I'm running. I'm much more likely just to really be in the moment and pay attention. You know, if the sun comes out through the cloud, I'm not bothered about stopping running and walking for a bit or just standing still and facing the sunlight. You just have your sun on there for a bit before you then get going. It's not about, again, it's not about beating yourself up. Right, I'm going to go for a walk, you know, I'm going to go for a walk for 20 minutes and I'm not going to stop walking. I'm going to walk the entire time. Well, actually, no. If you want to stand still and listen to a bird or just sit on the log for a bit, go for it. You're still going to be walking the same distance. It's just the time's different.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We've had one more question. So as a working mum and work's very demanding, I am unable to get time for exercise daily. What do you suggest? And I think this is a really good one, because I think a lot of us, as much as we would love to be able to exercise daily, it's not always possible.
Well, the easy answer to that is don't. Who says you need to exercise daily? You know, that's just one of those self-imposed rules potentially. If you can only fit in 2 lots of exercise a week, then great. That's fantastic. That's more than most people. And that's something that, one, you're more likely to look forward to because it's there, you know it's coming up. You've had to plan to book it in. So and that means it's really important because you've done that. But also, certainly as somebody who has in the past, you know, exercising regularly, particularly if it's quite intensive, isn't good. It's not good for the body. Your body needs time to repair, it needs to heal. So if you are somebody who wants to do quite a bit of exercise, then I'm pleased if you can't exercise daily. That's a good thing. But also, again, I think that's back to what I said earlier about really paying attention to other people in a similar situation to you. You know, I'm not a single mum. It's very difficult for me to comment on you know, ideas around it. But, you know, when I think about bits I've seen on Instagram and things like that, where, and to be fair, it's usually blokes doing really stupid things. But, you know, blokes using their baby as a dumbbell safely. But, you know, it's just trying to, again, do something, think a little bit differently with the time that you have got. So if it's doing a bit of exercise, a bit of stretching, a bit of running on the spot, you know, I've always wanted to be able to skip. Dreadful at it. But, you know, if you can skip, and you can fit 30 seconds in, 30 seconds skipping is enormous. You know, that's a massive heart rate. Just fit those little bits in rather than periods of exercise have to be a big chunk of time. I think that's often the difficulty as well, is we can think, we know it, you know, if it's less than 20 minutes, it's not worth doing. Well, of course it is. You know, if you want to do 20 minutes exercise a day, but you do it in 21-minute blocks throughout the day, fantastic. Go for it. Not a problem.
It all adds up, doesn't it? It could be like doing a couple of squats while you're brushing your teeth, or just sometimes I
Exactly.
find it quite helpful to habit stack. So
Oh, I
if you
like that.
already have a habit that's already happening, that you do every day, maybe you make a morning coffee. Whilst you're making that morning coffee, can you stretch your arms a little bit and do a couple of stretches, or jog on the spot or something? So
Yep.
yeah, there's loads of ways we can do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I live in a house with a very low ceiling. So if you have, be careful jogging on the spot. It's not good. Try
Yeah,
that.
very good point. We've had another question, which I think we might answer a little later, because it's about saying, my husband really needs to lose some weight for health reasons. Is there anything you can suggest to help me motivate him, or for him to motivate himself?
Okay.
I imagine we might get into that when we talk a bit more about the reasons. So
Yep.
maybe we'll hold that one off for a little
Yep.
while. Perfect. So let's move on to, so we're still talking about timing. So the next question I have for you is, how do we know when it's the right time for us to embark on a period of growth or change? So not necessarily around exercise, but just generally, how do we know when it's, because I think a lot of us can find ourselves getting stuck with thinking, oh, it's not quite the right time yet. So how can we figure that out?
Okay, I'm going to put my coach head on here. The easy answer is it's never the right time. So just start. Either start it now or book it in. And what I mean by that is, we have life. Life happens, stuff happens. If now truly isn't the right time because you've just got too much on, then fine, put something in your diary for next Monday and start next Monday. Obviously, what you don't want to be doing is then just keep booking it further and further back in time every time you get to it. But again, apologies for the corporate speak, but it's something I come back to quite a lot. It's about failing fast. Start now. If it truly isn't the right time, you probably won't find it fun, or you won't keep doing it, in which case that's a bit of feedback saying actually now is not the right time yet. But just keep trying it. And particularly when it comes to exercise, keep trying different types of exercise. I would never ever tell everybody to start running, because it's not for everybody. You might be a cyclist, you might be a yogi, and not the bear. And if you don't know what your thing is, that's where you can really have fun and try different things out. Yes, you can't go out there and buy loads and loads of new kit and stuff like that, but there's so much stuff out there on YouTube just to try things out, and just have some fun, have a play with it. And if you fail horribly and fall over because you're trying to skip on the spot, fine. If you're enjoying it, persevere and go for it. But if you're not, great. That's not something for you. Go and try something else. And that's one of those things where I think there's a lot of people with things like New Year's resolutions and exercise where almost the default is that it has to be running. Nothing is further from the truth. There are so many different things out there that you can do. So try lots of stuff. Try lots of things. And you'll find it. You will find something that will grab you enough that you keep doing it and realize you hadn't even thought about continuing to doing it. It's just now kind of part of what you do. I think that's when you really know you've kind of found your thing. Is that you maybe you're doing it daily or you're doing it twice a week, and several weeks in you suddenly realize actually I'm no longer even thinking that I have to do X. It's just now what I do. It's part of me. You really know when you've cracked it at that point.
I love that. I can really relate to that. That's yoga is definitely my thing, because that is the one exercise time and again I will come back to, and I will always do that. And I think it's a really important question, because so many of us can have that sense of perfectionism, maybe think, yeah, we have to have all the right equipment, or we have to know that this is definitely what we want to do before we start it. But just start imperfectly. If you're finding it overwhelming, start with a small step. So maybe get any essential equipment you might need, or just try it if you can equipmentless, and just start where you are with what you have.
Yeah, basically. Exactly. If you're thinking about kind of exercise, I don't know, maybe you used to be a gym goer and obviously can't at the moment, then build your own home gym. And I'm not talking about buying loads of dumbbells and kettlebells and things like that. Bottles of water, some old bricks you might have at the bottom of the garden. You use anything, just use stuff that's around you. And obviously it's all the body weight exercises as well. Your press ups, your sit ups, your burpees, anything along those lines. Again, if you're not somebody who's that comfortable with yoga, again, keep mentioning YouTube, but it is one of those things. You know, there's so much stuff out there and so many apps out there where it will start you off gently. You know, I try and do a bit of yoga to keep a little bit limber from running, but I'm dreadful at it. I don't think I've been able to touch my toe since I was 3 without bending my knees anyway. I blame that on the running, but tight hamstrings. But I will get there.
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of expands out further even than exercise, is to just start with the little things. So if you want to grow in a different way, if maybe you want to build up your confidence or you want to make a career change or something, again, it's about starting imperfectly and starting where you are. So just
exactly. You know, there's a big thing around mental health about, obviously, you know, Red January is often about obviously the exercise and the mental health, and you know, for me personally being outside, well, forget the exercise side, go out and do a bit gardening.
Yeah.
You know, grow something, you know, plant something and see it grow. It's finding that pleasure in those small things. That's what helps this. You know, there's something else out there beyond your internal thoughts, because that's where we can get stuck.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Perfect, thank you, Neil. So we're going to be talking about this idea of, so not one size fits all, and we've kind of mentioned this already quite a lot, but we're all going to be motivated at different times of the day and of the week. So how would you suggest we identify and work with our own kind of patterns and rhythms?
I think, again, it comes back to knowing when your key time is. And if you do have a key time and it's at the right time in terms of what you have on in life, great. If not, as someone who plans, there's an element of actually just the physicality of putting something in the diary. So you've kind of committed to it. You know, it's that kind of stuff where, you know, if you're trying to find a bit of work-life balance, and particularly now where a lot of people are working from home and, you know, perhaps not taking lunch breaks or tea breaks because it's easy just to literally pour something out of the kettle and then sit back down and carry on working. You know, diarize things. If it's in your diary, you're more likely to do it. Not that you will definitely do it, but you're more likely to do it because it's in there. So I think there's an element of, again, it's not about it being a chore, but there's an element of being maybe a little bit sterner with yourself sometimes. Make sure that you do it. And again, if it's about doing a little bit of exercise or just sitting on the bench out in your back garden on a Zoom call with somebody, then do that, because if you've committed to having a call with somebody, again, it's also about not letting them down as well. So there's a little bit of that external validation coming in. So if you are somebody who plans things in for yourself, but then somehow it never seems to quite happen, then kind of book some time in with somebody else as well. Have them there with you. You know, book each other in for a brunch and do something over that, even if it's just a chat. Again, it doesn't have to be around exercise.
Yeah, I love that. I think having that sense of accountability, and that's obviously something you know a lot about as being a coach. That's part of the work.
Yeah.
Coaches. Yeah, having that sense of accountability. And I think something I'd like to add is to really listen to yourself when it comes to knowing what times and rhythms work best for you.
Yeah.
As a woman, I menstruate, and that has an impact on my energy levels throughout the month. So for a lot of, if any other fellow menstruators are watching, you may relate to that. There are going to be certain points when you're just not going to have the energy to go out and nail a 10K run. You might just want to like lie down and do some yin yoga where you're literally just lying down, and it's great. So yeah, I would say my advice there would be definitely to listen to yourself and just try and identify when that energy is up, when it's down, and yeah, go from there. So looking at the poll results, most people are early morning exercises. So well done for you guys.
Good for you.
And then after that, a lot of people said there's no pattern. So that's
okay.
That's great. You can work it. You can do it whenever you want.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, coming back to the question around, that's interesting, because coming back to your question around the just generally how do we stay motivated within lockdown, that can be a big demotivator somewhere. Actually, you no longer have a pattern. You know, you maybe no longer have a commute into work, and there's no longer things happening, and that can really affect us actually. So again, there's an element where for some of you, yeah, you might have no pattern, but actually think about, do you need one? In which case, have a think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of routines are changing, things are shifting all the time. So
Yep.
Just tune into yourself and see what feels good. Perfect. So Let's have a look. So now we're going to be moving on to the right reason. And this is where we're going to get a little bit deeper into motivations and your why, which I'm excited to talk about. So Neil, we're going to start off with your quote, which I absolutely love, which is, "Don't lose the journey in order to reach the destination." Absolutely love that. So can you talk to us a little bit more about reasons and why they're so powerful in getting and keeping going? And you'll see there's another poll that's just been launched, so please do all vote in that as well.
Lovely. Yes, reasons are the key to it, really. The reasons is the why to the what. So the first bit we were talking about was, what is it that you want? But actually the reasons, the big motivator is, why do you want that? And, from the coaching point of view, that why has to come from you. So back to the question about the person wanting to motivate their husband, never going to happen. Yes, you can work with your husband to get him to motivate himself. Absolutely, that's a slightly different thing. But it's got to come from him at some point. He has to get to that point where he really wants to make that difference. Then yeah, coaching can help. You can help as his partner. Go for it. But it's really being clear what those reasons are. And it doesn't have to be just one. You could have a multitude of reasons for doing it. But those reasons are, again, they are the reasons why you're wanting to make the change, you're wanting to improve your mental health, or looking down the list, physical health, headspace, whatever it is. Those are the things you need to keep coming back to when you are feeling demotivated, when you're feeling a little bit lost. One way I often suggest to people is, write them down, stick them on Post-its, put them up on your kitchen cabinets. As constant, put them on the fridge door as reminders. A big thing for me then is, I'm sure, well, there is that kind of psychological thing that some of you may have a house that's less than tidy. Let's put it like that. There's part of your house not quite as tidy as you may like it. But give it a week and you probably stop noticing it. You step over that pair of shoes you kept meaning to move and things like that. So if you use something like Post-its or written reminders, one of my big tips is every now and again, once a week, once a fortnight, move it. Move that piece of paper, those Post-its, to somewhere else in the house, or to a different cupboard door, because your eye will be drawn to it rather than it starting just becoming to the norm. It's really, really useful, because it kind of, it's that little jarring thing. Oh, what's that? Oh yeah, that's what that is. So it's something to really keep that going. I think is quite an interesting one.
I love that. Can I just point out?
So, go.
Katie's just said in the chat, or get someone else to move it. They can surprise you.
Oh, I like it. Yes.
Love this.
I like that. Yeah, somewhere surprising every time. Yeah, that's really nice. That's really nice. And also the why is where social communities, your buddies, your friends can come in, because if you are in one of those dark places for a moment, with the best in the world, you might not be able to remind yourself why you're doing it, and you may need somebody else to help you remind you why you're doing it. Again, not as a stick. It's not to be used as you must get out there and do something. It's the real key. Why are you doing it? What's the driver to it? And if it is one of those moments where, I think you said earlier that it's just one of those days and you just don't feel like it, then if you can, what else could you do that isn't, say, exercise related, that would still help you get the reason? For me, because of my ME, I have a lot of pain. So I have a lot of joint pain. If it's just too much and I just can't face getting out the door, then a hot bath. For me, a hot bath helps with the pain levels, and it's also, part of the reason for me getting out there and running is to give me time to switch off and be a bit more mindful. Well, for me, a bath does the same. So yeah, I can't do the exercise bit, but I'm still going to get the reason I want to do it, just through a different avenue.
I love that. That's like, so you've got your kind of goal and your reason in mind, and you've just got different avenues to it. So different ways of achieving that. I love that. And I'd love to ask, how Have you got any advice or tips for how people can identify their reason and their why, and why it's so important to do that?
Wow. My kind of obvious answer is go and find a good life coach and go and speak to them and they'll help you with it. Plenty of those on the life coach directory. And, you know, kind of tongue in cheek, but yes, that's for yourself. That's an interesting one. I would say start writing down just some of your initial thoughts. You know, start capturing some of them, even if to begin with, you're almost doing it as pros and cons. So what's the pros of doing it and the cons of doing it? And what will start coming out of the pros, it will start giving you an inkling about the reasons why you're doing it. And if you have a what in mind, so you know what you want to achieve, then really it is write down the answer. But why? Why does that matter? Why does achieving that matter? That's going to start bringing out your motivation, your reasons for it.
I love that. And I think it's almost part of like self-coaching as well, isn't it? You start asking yourself the questions. So what will this bring to my life? So you can go deeper into the pros and cons. So what is this going to bring to my life?
Exactly. Because once you start thinking, why do I want, you know, to gain headspace, to physical health, mental health, whatever it is, there's got to be enough of a motivation in there for you to do it and keep doing it, particularly on those difficult days. And it's a question I come back to a lot when I am coaching people is, okay, you know, one of those initial questions, what is it you want? But one of kind of the key follow-up questions for me is, but do you want it enough? And enough is a really key word. You know, improving your mental health, improving your physical health isn't necessarily easy. There will be days when you might be, part of your head is fighting hard not to go out the door and do something. So you've got to want it enough that you are going to put that effort in, whether, again, mental effort, physical effort, whatever it is, because, you know, it's not always going to be easy. Hopefully it will be, and hopefully it will be fun and great, but there are going to be tough times. And if you don't want that reason enough, it makes it very difficult to stay with that motivation, really.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you, Neil. That's really interesting. So my last question on this is, how can we hold on to that reason and our why when things get tough?
Okay. Slightly back to the reminders. So keep those reminders going. Keep talking to your cheerleaders, whoever they are. And again, it's come up a few times, but it is a massive one around this stuff, is keep being kind to yourself. Is really, really be careful when those thoughts start beating yourself up. As soon as your thoughts start saying, I should, then start paying attention to, okay, but who says? Who says you should do something? Almost back to that earlier question about, well, I can't exercise every day. Well, who says you should exercise every day? Actually, that's not particularly healthy. So be mindful of your own shoulds and musts, and I shouldn't haves and I mustn't haves. That's all that negative stuff in there. Instead, start thinking about, okay, but what do I want? What do I like to do? What do I feel like doing? And back to your point just before about really listening to yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're really not feeling it in that moment, fine. You're not feeling it in that moment. Maybe you will in 30 minutes time. Does that really matter?
Absolutely. And something I would add to that is, if you are feeling really stuck with this, if you're finding it really difficult, if you're struggling to find your why, as Neil mentioned, hiring a coach is a very easy way of getting someone to talk to and to talk these issues out. Obviously, you don't have to work with a coach. You can also just chat to a friend if that's
of course
for you. But working with a coach can help you just to really identify what's happening underneath the surface. So what's really going on, and it can really help dig up those whys. So I think my colleague Lucy has popped in a link to Life Coach Directory, which is one of the websites that Neil is a member of, and it's part of our Happiful network. And you can just search on there for coaches around the UK. Lots of them are working remotely at the moment. So if you want someone to chat to, that's a great place to start.
Absolutely.
So we've just had a quick question. So what would you say is a minimum time period you should try something out for? Because sometimes you have to do it continuously for the effect to come through. So in short, Would it be something like 10 days or 14 days? Is there any kind of calculation out there?
Oh, blimey. I had a feeling this might come up when I said about failing fast. Interesting one. I could start bringing in almost arbitrary numbers depending on which form of research that you look at. Partly it depends, I'm going to slightly cop out here. It partly depends on how you work as an individual. Do you like to really try and get to grips with something before you know for definite it's not for you? Or are you somebody who's quite good at listening to yourself, actually trying something? And it's that thing about, yes, of course you could persevere with something and get better at it, but it's almost back to but do you want to? You know, is it going to give you joy? Is it going to feel good about yourself? Or is it just because you feel you should? And again, there's the should word again. I mean, yeah, there is that thing to say that you could link to the stuff around the habit. It keeps being not necessarily debunked, but different figures come in where they say if you do something 29 times in the row or something around there, it becomes a habit. There's no harm in trying something, say, for 10 days and trying it out. It's not a problem. All I would say for something like that is be careful that it's not something where you are needing to buy a load of kit to do it or put a lot of investment into doing it, because then you're potentially just wasting money and, you know, wasting the effort. I think it's back to your point, Kat, about listening to your body, listen to yourself. Because if you listen to yourself, you'll soon know whether it's for you or not. You know, coming back to my running part, you might not feel you're a natural runner, but you might want to go and give it a go. And yes, of course, when you go out there for the first time, it'll be hard. Of course it will. But if there's something about that kind of grabs you, that you like being outside and you like the challenge, then that's letting you know it's probably worth persevering for a bit. But actually, if you've done it 3 times and you were just miserable the whole time, maybe it's not for you. Go and try something else. You can always come back to it. Nobody says you can't come back to it later. Again, it's not about, oh, I tried running and hated it, so it's definitely not right for me. Well, go and try 20 other different sports and exercises and yoga and Pilates and stuff. Nobody says you can't come back to running at some point. Maybe you might come back to it once you're fitter through another avenue. But also, nobody says you can only do one thing.
Absolutely. And on that,
you want.
Absolutely. And on that note, lovely Hannah from Red, she has said, she's reminded us, please know that Red January is about movement rather than exercise or sport.
Absolutely.
And that is such a key takeaway, I think, from all of this, is that, as you said earlier, it can be going out gardening, it could be like walking the dog, or it could be, it doesn't have to be a sport.
Getting out your chair and stretching. Yeah. Let those shoulders crack. Well, maybe that's just me, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Alison agrees. Being active isn't always about exercise. Perfect. Lovely. Thank you, everyone. So let's just have a quick look at that last poll to see what everyone said.
Just seen somebody's comment, I love a crack. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
That's cool.
Oh, yeah, a good bone crack. So the last poll was about your reason and what is your driving reason for change at the moment. And the top one was, both mental and physical health. So that's fantastic. Everyone's all about that, and some people said several or all of the above. So a lot of you are just looking to improve your overall wellness and mental and physical health. So that's fantastic. So that is what we have in terms of our discussion. So we've now got a little bit of time for questions. So if anybody has got any other questions for Neil, please do pop them in the chat box now, and we shall go through them now. I'm just going to go through and check we haven't missed anything.
Sure.
Some great comments in general just about how people are doing Red January.
I've just seen somebody put up housework is exercise. It certainly is. My goodness.
Yeah, especially like hoovering. Oh,
exactly. Yeah, a bit of vigorous hoovering. That'll get the heart rate up.
Yeah, perfect. And just stepping out of the door to run is an achievement. Absolutely. Right, so we have a question from Mike, which is, as an introvert who is high in agreeableness and openness to change, some would suggest, and I would tend to agree, that I am built psychologically to cope well with lockdown. However, for those who are more extroverted and less agreeable or open to change and may have had higher neuroticism, it's a hard word to try and say, what coping mechanisms could you suggest to help them cope with lockdown? So yeah, so people who maybe are more extroverted and are finding it tough at the moment. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, The extroversion thing is an interesting one. It's, again, particularly when you're in, you know, quite tight lockdown. Again, it's the social side of it. So the online social communities, as I said, Zoom exercise, it's something where there's an element of interaction in there, and particularly a level of interaction where it's not necessarily just, what am I trying to say, just impromptu, that things are booked in. So, you know, they're booked in a walk, or booked in a time when I don't know, you could be out, as long as your Wi-Fi works that far, in the garden doing a bit of gardening while your friend is also gardening in their garden. So again, it's about that movement and things, but it's about that level of interaction, mutual support, which introverts still need, but to a lesser degree. Whereas extroverts would tend to be more about interaction during and whilst. So again, those virtual challenges and things like that. So even if you're doing a virtual challenge where you go and do your exercise on your own, the fact that you're coming back, you know, I don't know, uploading some evidence and then chatting to people and seeing where other people are. And if you're a competitive person, seeing where you are on the leaderboard and chatting to other people, that can help alleviate some of that difficulties for extroversion people. It's never going to get rid of it. It's always going to be difficult. But, you know, introverts need people too. Introverts aren't hermits. You know, we all need a little bit of, again, back to that cheerleading, really. We all need a little bit of that. And sometimes the extroverts, particularly if they're really struggling mentally, an extrovert will often go introvert. So if you know an extrovert who has disappeared, either you're in the same house and they've suddenly gone really quiet, or you've got an extrovert who normally, I don't know, WhatsApps you a lot or texts you a lot or whatever, and they've gone quiet, just give them a gentle reminder that you're there. And if you are part of their cheerleader, a gentle reminder for their reasons for getting moving as well.
Oh, I love that. Really helpful advice. Thank you, Neil. We've had a question from Dina, which is about eating well. And we have pointed out, so we have actually got another webinar next Wednesday, which is we're going to be talking with a nutritionist. So I would definitely recommend listening to that. If you can't make that live webinar or any of the future live webinars, the audios are going to be on our podcast, I Am, I Have, and the videos will be uploaded to our various websites. So please don't worry if you can't make it live. Sign up to register and then you can get all the information afterwards. Just double check there's no more questions. Hi, would you say life coaching is more applicable to our current situation, lockdown, etc., or therapy or counselling, particularly with regards to anxiety?
Oh, blimey. There's one, if I comment on I might get shot. For me, any therapy will work if it's the right therapy for you. And I'm not doing that just to be political and stay out of it. But, you know, I have to say it would, with a slight caveat. However, for me, coaching is about being present and future focused. I think I said in the introduction, I started off in counselling and kind of gravitated towards coaching. And I think in this current kind of lockdown, this period, there's so much happening now and so much anxiety and unsureness about what does the future hold, that I think coaching can be really helpful because it's helping you put in place future goals, whatever they will be. So it's almost sod the rest of the world, can't control that, have no idea which way it's going because nobody does. So actually let's try and take some control over the bit that I can. And that's what I want to head to as an individual. So I think coaching can definitely do that. But if you're someone who simply likes to talk things out, then of course another talking therapy can be helpful. You know, the CBT, there's all sorts of stuff out there. Again, it's partly also down to what's driving and what are the causes of your mental health, really.
Absolutely. And my colleague Lucy has actually popped in an article that I believe I wrote this actually, which is all about, do I need a counsellor or a coach? So in that article, we go through all the different things, and it's not necessarily about right now because it was written a year or so ago, but it's a helpful kind of place to go and kind of think about the different questions and answers. But I think, as you said, Neil, it's what works best for you.
Yeah.
And I think at the moment, coaching is it's quite, as you said, forward focused. You can start thinking of planning ahead, and especially if it's more situational anxiety rather than necessarily long term that you've had for a long time.
Absolutely. And a lot of it, you know, let's face it, a lot of it comes down to your connection and relationship with your therapist. So with the therapist, the counsellor, the coach. So, you know, there are lots of us on Life Coach Directory. You know, if you think about getting a coach, shop around. You know, don't necessarily go for the first one. You know, most of them will be offering, you know, a first initial chat. You know, and that's not just so you can ask them questions, they can ask you questions. It's actually to see if there's a connection there, because that's key. Absolutely key.
Couldn't agree more. Perfect. Thank you so much, Neil. So before we go, can we just wrap up by you telling everybody where they can find you and where they can learn more from you?
Absolutely. Obviously on the Life Coach Directory, you can find me on there. My website is thefearlessnight.com. I'm on Instagram, it's The Fearless Night. So beginning with the it's, ITS, The Fearless Night. And also, I suppose one of my more regular stuff is I vlog on YouTube. So again, The Fearless Night is my YouTube channel. So, and I tend to vlog while I run. So it's all me gasping at the camera, sometimes just talking about what I'm seeing as I'm running, but also talking about some life coaching stuff as well. So if people would like to follow me on YouTube and would like to hear me talk about something, a topic, you know, send me a message on, you know, on the YouTube or whatever, and I will try and talk about it on my next vlogs.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Neil. And we are happiful.com if you want to learn more about us, and our brand's on there, lifecoachdirectory.org.uk, as well, as we said, if you're searching for a coach. Also, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, I Have, so you can listen to the audios and all of our back catalogue of fantastic interviews we have there. And we also have an app, which is the Happiful app. So you can find all of this content kind of all in one place, and you can access professionals, counsellors, nutritionists, coaches, hypnotherapists, read all of our content and just stay up to date with everything. But thank you so much all for coming along.
Yes,
it's been really fantastic to kind of see you chatting and getting involved, and really hope you took away a lot from this.